On tap today, we have Eddie Deezen. How you doing today, good sir?
Great, Aaron. It's great talking to you.
I am glad to have you here. There's so many things I want to pick your brain about. I mean, first of all, I have to confess that I got to know your work through Laserblast,
Uh-huh.
which
My
I
very first film released, yeah. It was the second film I did. Grease was my first film.
Mhm.
Laserblast was second, but Laserblast was released first. So it was my
Mhm.
first film ever released, March 1st, 1977.
And once I realized that, I went through a little rabbit hole, and so much of your voice acting is stuff that has meant a lot to me. So there's a bunch of things, and I guess want to say making movies back when you made Grease and Laser Blast, it was a
Hmm.
very different time, and I find that period of movie making very fascinating.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was a great time.
What strikes you as being different about that compared to the way we're doing things now?
Well, the budget for one thing. Greece, we made a budget of $6 million.
Hmm.
$6 million. Greece is like you made what, 80 gajillion dollars or whatever now,
Yes.
but it was $6 million. When we did 1941, it was the biggest comedy of all time. Blowed, Spielberg's throwing away all this money. So it was $40 million. Now you almost do student films for this money now. So the money's changed. Yeah, nah. The style of humor, like a lot of the like. I did a DVD commentary of a movie I did called Surf 2 in the 80s. And it was like a time capsule of the 80s. There were, these crazy party films we had in the 80s, different eras, different genres catch on. And in the
Hmm.
80s, there was that kind of films, I guess maybe the Animal House was so influential, and I think it kind of carried on to the 80s. That there were, the wild party films, Bachelor Party, stuff like that.
And those kind of films, I mean, number one, I like them. I like a movie that'll give me a good laugh, and those movies were all about that.
Yes.
It was okay
I
being
saw the
silly.
film. I saw Surf 2 yesterday. I watched first film for the first time in like 35 years, and I was laughing my head off. It was really, really a funny film. I do funny stuff in it. Everybody in the cast, Cleavon Little, everybody's funny in it. And it was really a funny film. So, even me who made it, I changed my opinion. When Surf 2 first came out, I thought it was a real dog. I thought we saw it, and I remember going to the premiere. The press was there, and I thought I was disappointed. I go, we missed with this one. I thought it was going to be good because that was the first one I ever had the lead in. I was the lead name in that, and I wanted to do good. But in retrospect, it's kind of a cult film now, and it's really funny. The director would just let me loose. Usually when I work on a film, Aaron, the director say, pull it back a little because I get very broad. I get hyper and broad, and they'll say pull it back. But this director just let me loose, Randall Badot. And I can really, it's me, in my mid-20s when I was in my prime, physically, and I'm just doing my thing.
Very much so, and I find it amusing that the complaint would have been that you were hyper. You strike me as a hyper guy, really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In first grade, Aaron, my teacher used to tie me in my chair with a jump rope. I couldn't stay in my seat. I was always running around. And finally, literally, she put me in my chair and she tied me with a jump rope to my seat so I wouldn't run around so much. Even as early as kindergarten, I remember, in kindergarten, we take those naps on towels, you put your towel on for, and I could never do it. The kids would sleep on their towels, and I would be running around or walking around. I just couldn't lie still, and I'd be walking around.
Sure, and that's again, that's what you need in comedy. You need energy, you need spontaneity and excitement, and that's what it's very hard to find a comedy these days, much less find one that has that in it.
Totally agree. I couldn't agree with you more. There hasn't been a really good one out in years.
Hmm. I'm trying to think of the last time. I mean, honestly, the last time I really, really laughed at a movie was Deadpool, and that was not exactly a comedy, but it had that kind of comedic effect that took me by
Excellent point.
surprise.
Excellent call. Excellent point. He just kind of riffs in it. I thought he was channeling Robin Williams. He was so funny in that. So what's the guy's name again?
Uh, Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds. He's hilarious. He's a
Hmm.
brilliant comedian. I go, this is like a Robin Williams film more than anything else. He's just riffing, and he was hysterical. I was great. From the title credits, it was funny. They had
Hmm.
those obscene title credits, these funny credits like that. It just went from there. And you make an excellent choice. I love that movie. I saw the movie with my mom, and we both loved it. My mom loved it too. I thought it was so clever, original, funny. Yeah.
It was one of the few times I had to stop a movie because I was laughing so hard that I was afraid of missing something.
Yeah, that's quite a compliment. Yeah,
And
I
that's
mean
and
to Ryan. Yeah,
I was about to say that it's not really a comedy, but it is, and it's actually not too far from the movies we were just talking about, the Animal House and
Yeah, it's
Surf
very
2.
tongue in cheek.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I see this. I see what you're going for, and I see your point there. Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's not exactly like that. Where there's, the '80s was the ensemble party scenes.
Mm-hmm.
This was like Ryan Reynolds, tour de force. This is his thing. He's
Mm-hmm.
like totally stole the movie in every way. It's his movie. Whereas the '80s it was like Animal House. This these group of people doing the stuff together.
Yeah, and like to go back to say a Laser Blast, just to make a movie designed to give somebody a good time and to be a good use of an afternoon, it's seen as being simplistic today. We don't do that. Everything has to be a big budget masterpiece, and
Yeah, it has
yeah.
to be big. But, remember, we're working in a different industry now. In those days when I first started, Grease, Laserblast, I Want to Hold Your Hand, you made a movie.
Mm-hmm.
If it tanked, and you wouldn't hear from it again. It goes to TV, and you might see it on the Late Show. Now, we have 500 channels. Everything's picked up. I did this turkey airing called A Polish Vampire in Burbank.
Mm-hmm.
Low budget. I did it as a favor to a friend. It's like a student film, and somebody emailed me, Eddie, I just saw you in A Polish Vampire in Burbank. Are you serious? It's like everything's swallowed up now because you've got to fill 500 channels now, and we have DVDs, videos. All it's just a different world now. When I grew, how old are you, Aaron?
I am about to turn 40.
Oh, okay. You're still pretty. You're younger than me. I'm 64. I turned 64 on March 6th. And when we grew up, you want to see something like let's say a Marx Brothers film. I want to see Duck Soup,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to wait. You just wait. When's it going to play TV? That was the only thing you had.
Mm-hmm.
You just wait. Maybe in 6 months it comes on TV. Then it's on at 8 o'clock. So you have to time your dinner and get home. I'm going to do my homework and da da da. But from 8 to 10, I want to watch this Marx Brothers film. Nowadays, you push a button on a computer, you can get any Marx Brothers film or anything. Let alone TV. They're all over the place. So we live in a great world that way. Technology is good in that we have such access to this stuff. Like Laserblast would probably never have been heard from again, Now you'll find it. And Mystery Science Theater, by the way, did a hilarious takeoff on that. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yes, many times.
By the way, that's better than the movie. I laughed my head off when I saw it. It was so much better than the movie. The movie's very mediocre, I thought.
It has its charm, and you can see where it came from, being right in the meat of the Star Wars era.
Yeah.
But I I find it funny that a lot of people now refer to you as the Bill Gates character, which was a reference you would not have had back then.
Right.
You seem to enjoy the fact that your movie took on that kind of an identity long after it's released.
Yeah, because it gives it life, right? And again, like I said with Surf 2, I saw, you see films in different times. You view them at different times. You could say, for instance, The Apartment. The Apartment's one of my all-time favorite films. I've seen it like 6 times. Mm-hmm. And then one time I watched it and I didn't like it. I just turned on the part and I go, this film, it just annoyed me and I didn't like it. It was a different view. Then I saw it again after that, Aaron, and I liked it again. It's one of my favorite films. But, something might happen. Maybe you had an argument. Maybe you and your girlfriend had an argument that day or something. You know what I mean? Maybe you were a little bit sick that day. Maybe, somebody didn't pay off the debt they owe you that day and you were upset. It could be anything. So when you watch it too, can have effect too. Steve Allen talked about this. You can have a good crowd in a theater. You get into a movie and you show the same movie, and one night he goes, you come in and it's this carnival crowd. They're all ready to laugh and they're rollicking and they're ready to go. And you come in another time and it's just a down crowd. They're just like almost hostile and they don't want to laugh. It's the same film. And it can be that way in nightclubs too. You get a good crowd. You get a good crowd. You do the same shtick the next night, and you get a bad reaction, and got a good reaction before. So there's all kinds of we're human beings. We have all these different facets. Different things happen, and we have all this different technology. Different things happen.
True enough, and I love the fact that you picked The Apartment. That is a movie. It's on my short list of if you just need a random good movie to give people, I always toss in that one.
Yes, unequivocally. It's so beautiful.
It is, and it's one of those movies. My favorite part about it is that unlike most of the movies of that era, you don't really see the happy ending until about 10 seconds before the credits roll.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen, right? You don't know if she's going to die when she attempts suicide. It takes you all over the place in that film. Fred McMurray plays this great heavy in it, and it's just such a beautiful film in every way. It's almost a perfect film. Well, you don't get any better than Billy Wilder. There's nobody better.
Yeah, to call it a perfect film, I'm not sure what I could say. Oh, that was a missed moment. That was a bad line. Usually, I can find something where it's like, man, if they could do that again, they'd do it differently. You couldn't do that one differently.
Right.
any step of the way.
Right.
But to speak of just perfect for me, when's the last time anyone asked you about Duckman?
Oh, Duckman, yes. Nobody. I don't think I've ever been asked about that in an interview. I'm on Facebook, and somebody might have mentioned it on Facebook, but I remember Jason Alexander was the nicest guy in the world. I loved working with him. He was a wonderful, nice man. It was a fun shoot. Everybody was nice in the cast and crew. And that's about all I remember. I remember Jason Alexander. I didn't know who he was. Interesting, at that time, I'd never seen Seinfeld. And I just thought, this is this nice guy. I didn't know he was George Costanza. Then I later became a Seinfeld nut. I started to go, that's the guy I work with. And so, Seinfeld, I've seen every episode. I just love it. Like, I was in Hollywood one day and walking down the street, Jerry Seinfeld with a girl, a girlfriend. I don't know that I go, there's that guy on TV. I said, I didn't know his name was Seinfeld, but I'd seen him somewhere on TV. I knew he was a star, and I just pointed him out, and he nodded his head to me. It was very innocuous.
Sure enough, and we're just talking about how The Apartment is one of those movies that just doesn't get a lot of recognition, and Duckman to me is one of those.
So? How do you figure that?
Because
I thought it's known as a classic.
Oh, I think it's a classic too, but only among people who really like movies. If you just
That's interesting. I'm not sure that I'm not sure I agree with you on that one. I don't know. I thought it just acclaimed as one of the greatest movies ever made. I've never seen that. I've seen it. It's just kind of, not to the extent of Wizard of Oz or Citizen Kane, but it's known as a classic film, like The Searchers or something like that, or Red River. It's just a classic Hollywood movie.
You won't get any argument from me. When I bring up classic movies, that just doesn't tend to make the short list for people who are just not super movie buffs, but I said I think it's perfect. But Duckman for me is one of those shows
it's about as close to perfect as you ever get.
Yeah, I think Duckman.
I'm sorry. What were you saying?
I was just saying I think Duckman is an amazing show that just didn't get. Nobody talks about that either right now. It's like I said, it's got a great cast. You're being one great example there. Iggy Catalpa was a great character.
Yes, Iggy Catalpa, right.
Yeah, and it's just amazing that in this age when you said you can get stuff at the push of a button, we've missed stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just kind of wondering if that, I'm surprised that nobody brings it up to you.
Yeah, I don't know. They'll bring up what's the one I did? Dexter's Lab's what I usually get. As far if you count Polar Express as animation, that's obviously the one people talk about the most because that's like kind of a classic. Not to toot my own horn, but it's looked on as kind of a classic right now. But Dexter's Lab was probably my best thing that I did animate. I never hit something super big like to do The Simpsons, or Family Guy. I did one thing, and for some reason they never released it. I went in to do a Family Guy, got called in, and Seth was there, and we recorded together. I had 2 lines to go. Oh, hi, welcome to the Republican convention. I said like 2 lines, and for some reason they had somebody else do it. They didn't use what I did. I don't know. To this day, I don't know what went wrong or why Seth didn't just use my stuff. It was, it wasn't a big thing, but why didn't he just put it in the episode? But I looked and looked for that, and then Family Guy is one of the great shows, but I just never did that, and I never did a Simpsons, So Dexter's Lab was probably the best thing I ever did when I played Mandark.
I'll be honest with you. Your work in voice acting, I've been wanting to get a voice actor on for a while, and you've got a heck of a resume in that regard. What is it like being a voice actor?
Oh, I loved it. I'll go to the genesis of it. I did War Games. When I did War Games in 1983, okay, I come in, I had the one scene. It's a good scene. It's a scene I'm very proud of, and that's one of the really good films I did. I think it's kind of a classic film. Like maybe that's like what you would like The Apartment. I think War Games is kind of like that. It's kind of like one of the classic films in that sense. But anyway, I go in. I have to say in the dialogue here, and I had to say da 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 da, and this new data encryption algorithm. Now, I can say it now, data encryption algorithm. But when we were filming it, we were there, and I was with Matthew, and Maury Chaikin, my partner there. By the way, that was the first computer nerd. That was the character I played in the movie was the first time there was a computer nerd. You can never find one earlier than that. But that was the start of the computer nerd. Then after that, these guys came out with the pocket protectors and the glasses and the high voice. That was all not based on it, but that started computer nerds. But anyway, to get back to the point, I couldn't say data encryption algorithm. They go, action. I go, yeah, we went to new data encryption algorithm. Cut. Take 2. Yeah, we went to new data encryption algorithm. Cut. Take 3. And I kept screwing it up. So finally, my director was Marty Brast. He calls me over. He crooks his finger. Come here, Eddie, let's go for a little walk. He puts his arm around my shoulder. We go outside. He goes, you're costing the studio money. I literally screwed up like 10 or 15 takes. I just couldn't get that line. He goes, you're costing the studio money. He goes, what we're going to do is we're going to write your dialogue down on these things. They're called idiot cards. And he said idiot kind of the way he looked at me. You know, these are idiot cards. Like, I thought he was a little bit hostile there. But then he writes it down. I do the scene. And Aaron, I did it in one take. I read the thing, you know. Okay, you go in and take that. It's the new data encryption algorithm. And I read it, and that was the end of it. And I go, this is great. You just read the line. Because I always had a hard time memorizing lines. I was never a good study. Some people, you know, Jackie Gleason, I heard, Desi Arnaz, I've heard, they just would get a script, they read it through one time, and they have the whole thing memorized. Not just their role, but they'd have everybody's dialogue memorized. And I could never do that. I did it like I had a big role and I want to hold your hand, and I really worked hard to memorize. And then later on I did, I think, Mob Boss. I memorized. I didn't use cue cards in that. But anyway, to get to the point, we did war games, and I had that with the cue cards. Then I started using them after that. And then they said there's this thing called voiceover. I started doing voiceovers like a few years after that. And you just read your dialogue. You don't have to memorize anything. Every voiceover, you know, you have the script right there, and you read. You know, I walked down the street and I saw a pretty girl on Maple Street, and you read the whole thing. And I fell in love with it. It's easy. I can do this easy. So that's how I started doing it. Like, for instance, Polar Express. Polar Express, my whole role is on cue cards. Everything I did was just read. They got me Bob Hope's cue card holder, and he held it, and I read my whole role off that. And most of the films later, the Fred Olin Ray films and some of the other stuff I did, it's all read off cue cards, or we'd have little index cards on the set. I was like Marlon Brando. Anyway, Aaron, we did Polar Express. I used cue cards all the way through it. Tom Hanks never said a word. Then the last day of shooting, we're there the last day of shooting, I'm there with my cue cards, and Tom, he goes, what the fuck are you doing using cue cards? He goes, what are you, fucking Marlon Brando? He was kind of like saying it in a joking way, because he's like a joker, Tom Hanks, he kids around, but there was a little bit of truth there. I think he was a little, you know, this guy is not he's the consummate professional, you know, but he said that he was kind of like an older brother to me. He was kind of like scolding me, you know, you have to use cue cards, you know, so that's how we ended up doing it. But I mean, he was a wonderful guy. He was never mean in any way, but there was just a very telling story.
Yeah, I've heard that, you know, Tom Hanks is one of those people that should be on the short list of when the aliens come and we need people to represent us. We should have him on speed dial.
What a beautiful line. I got to use that, Aaron. That's a great line. I mean, you couldn't have summed them up better. Same with John Travolta, same thing. They're like these. I wrote to John Travolta, I go, you're the person we all admire and aspire to be. And what you said is a beautiful quote. You're right. If the aliens come to Earth, I would want him to go and represent. What a beautiful line.
Well, thank you. It's been banging around in my head. I don't actually remember if I came up with it or not. It's just been there for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it fits Hanks to a T. He's just like you've always heard. He's just like everybody says he is. He's exactly what you see.
So, but again, it seems like once you get into the voice acting gig, you're stuck there for life, because people tell me the same thing. It's this amazing, easy. I don't say easy because it's never easy, but there's a lot less stress. There's a lot less fuss, right?
No, you're exactly right. It was less competitive, I remember. This is like the days of the late 90s and the early 2000s. Nowadays, everybody's doing voiceovers. Now, this before there was a time, you know, the big stars didn't do voiceovers. And then later, you know, you get Robin Williams and the greats doing voiceovers. Everybody wants to do them because it is so easy. You just go in. It was much less competitive. Like, acting is pretty dog-eat-dog. It's like, you know, I want this role, da-da-da-da, you almost kill somebody to get the role. I'm exaggerating, but it's pretty tough. It's pretty competitive. Whereas voiceovers, we all kind of accepted each other. We go, Eddie does this shtick, and he does this, and all. We were all kind of rooting for each other. That's how I always found it anyway. The voiceover community was much friendlier, nicer, less competitive. I mean, I loved the on-camera community, too, but I just found it more dog-eat-dog.
You know, and that's kind of what I was getting at. I was curious about is what the internal community was like, because, you know, trying to get a hold of voice actors, trying to look into what they say to their fans on social media, it seems like it's very hard to see what the rapport is like, what the chemistry is like.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
Yeah. So, and you say that's changed?
Well, it's like any other project. The good projects, there's this natural chemistry, you know, whether it's Gilligan's Island or Citizen Kane. You know, the really great project that lasts through time. And I do include Gilligan's Island. people will laugh, but I consider Gilligan's Island great art myself. I think it's a great show. You'll find this great camaraderie and it's like this thing that all comes together, all the pieces come together. When you see the classic films, the Citizen Kane, Red River, whatever, Star Wars or whatever you're talking about, Mary Poppins, every piece fits. You got the great directing, the casting is good, the actor's performance is good, the direction's good, cinematography's good, the dialogue's good, and there's so many things. Somebody made a quote, I'm paraphrasing, but they just go, when a movie's bad, it's hard to make a classic movie or a great movie because there's so many things that can go bad. There's so many things. If any of those factors, let's say you have a good cast and the director's bad, it can sabotage it, or vice versa. Let's say you have a great director. Let's say you have John Ford and it's a weak cast. They just can't carry the role. Or maybe somebody's miscast. John Wayne played Genghis Khan in that movie. It's not right for John Wayne, to play Genghis Khan. And there's all these different things. Maybe the writing's off in the film. The Marx Brothers, the Marx Brothers did these great films, and then the later films were much weaker. Were the Marx Brothers worse? No, it was a couple years later. The writing got worse. The writing in their films was worse. Laurel and Hardy, the writing in their films got bad at MGM.
Sure. And I'm not going to disagree with you for a second calling Gilligan's Island art, because for me, art is anything at which you put your mind to making. It doesn't even necessarily have to be creative. So
right.
If somebody's saying,
Give me an example. What do you mean?
Like, for example, people will say, there's an art to making a pot roast.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
okay.
Gotcha. It's the fact that you say, I'm going to do this, and you do it. So if what you're going to do is make a TV show, and you make one that has great actors, has a decent story, if it hits the audience in such a way that they respond to it, then that's great art right there. So
what I would say to you about making the pot roast, I see where you're going with that. And sometimes words have different definitions. Mm-hmm. That would be another definition word. I see what you're saying. Like for a barber, you see a barber working and he gives these great haircuts. He's an artist. I see what you're saying. Yeah. But is he an artist in the sense that James Dean was an artist, or Katharine Hepburn, But I totally see what you're going for. You're right. So we all have these little gifts per that definition because everybody has their thing, Mm-hmm. Everybody's an artist in their own field,
Yes, they are.
A beautiful girl. You meet a beautiful girl. The way she made herself up and made her hair up and the way she dresses in this way, it's art. A beautiful woman is art. There's no question about it.
Agreed. And, you talk about Gilligan's Island, and people will be down on that. Hey, I've watched Gilligan's Island when I was homesick from school. I loved it just as much as anybody else.
Greatest show ever. I think it's my favorite comedy show of all time. I mean, I love it, particularly the earlier episodes. It got kind of jumped the shark later on in the late episodes. The writing got kind of lazy, but you got all 7 of these people. Let's analyze Gilligan's Island. You got all 7 of these people. They all played their role great. Every one of them was great. Mm-hmm. There was this camaraderie of that. The secret of the show was this love they had for each other. It was these 7 people, and they had this love for each other. It's like 7 people against the physical universe. The physical universe is a bitch, You got matter, energy, space, and time, and we have these little bodies. We're these little 6-foot, 5-foot things. We're called human beings, and we're fighting the physical universe. Just go out and look at the stars sometimes. Just go up and stare at the sky. If you want to feel introverted, just go outside and look at the sky for about 5 minutes, and you'll see how small we are. But, we band together and we try to conquer the universe, which, we try to go to the moon, or, there's a disaster and we try to band together with the flood or whatever, and we try to stop this disaster or fight against this disaster. But the universe is a tough nut to crack. We're fighting something very tough.
Yeah, and that's really deep, man. There's so much to unpack there. It's not even funny. But, mm-hmm. I mean, that was I've heard the original pitch for Gilligan's Island was they were trying to find a way to tell a story about how people of different backgrounds could end up working together if they had to.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's exactly what it was. That's what Sherwood Church was going for. And the question is always, why did the Howells always have the costume changes? Everybody else wore the same outfits. The Howells had all these different outfits. Why? And Sherwood Schwartz said, I wanted to show that the rich always had it better. Even on a 3-hour tour, they're marooned, he said, I wanted to show that the rich had it better. It was kind of a social satire.
Mm-hmm. And you
because
notice
they shouldn't, they're all on this island. They should all be equals. But somehow Mr. and Mrs. Howell were a little bit above the other. They were a little more prestigious.
And I love how there's a very subtleness. What made it subtle to me, I don't know. That the professor the skipper and Gilligan were always wearing red, white, and blue in a very just
Yeah,
slightly
no,
patriotic nod.
no. You're very smart. Was that a touch? I don't know. We'll never know. I've never read that, but I realized the same thing. Those two will have a lot of scenes together, red, white, and blue. And is it just a total coincidence, or was it a patriotic thing, a little thing Sherwood Schwartz put in there?
And
because you figure with the word in the black and white, the first season was black and white. It didn't matter.
Right. But, Professor being the skipper being a veteran, that would have been just one more thing to throw in there just to cap it off.
You mean a veteran in the show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there were some episodes where he was referring back to his time in the war. Right.
And Ginger, it's interesting. Some episodes, Ginger's like this B movie. Some episodes, she's like successful. Mm-hmm. Ginger Grant, she's like a kind of a movie. They say in the beginning, I'm the movie star. She's like, but then some episodes you go, when I'm a famous star, and she's like this aspiring actress. They kind of changed her character a little bit there. By the way, who would have thought she would be the last survivor, Tina Louise?
Right.
Who would have guessed that? Yeah. I saw her, Aaron. She's always been one of my two big fantasy girls are been Barbara Eden and Tina Louise. Now, Barbara Eden, I've done several signings with. She's beautiful to this day. She's gorgeous. But Tina Louise was appearing once in L.A. She'd written a children's book, and she was there signing it. So, I was all excited. I'm going to go see it. I took the bus, way down like an hour's ride to go see it. And then I saw her, and she looked so washed out and horrible. I almost cried, And I didn't even go to see her. It just broke my heart. Because, we think of her as this va-va-va-boom Ginger,
Mm-hmm. I definitely see now. First convention I ever went to on my own, I went there specifically for the purpose of seeing Barbara Feldon.
Oh, yeah. One of the last shows I did was with her. Yeah, she's lovely. And
Indeed.
She just turned 88,
Mm-hmm. And it was an amazing moment for me. It was 2002, I want to say. So I was just hitting my early 20s. She was a hair north of that. But, just like you said, beautiful woman's a beautiful woman no matter what.
Yes.
But we're talking about these shows, and you're talking about how Ginger she could be famous one minute and a wannabe the next, and that's what I miss about that era of TV is that you could have shows that were a little bit fantastic. You could have sitcoms that were based on absurd situations, and that's another thing. We just got away from.
You have a talking horse. Mm-hmm. You have a Martian. You have a witch, you have a genie. You're right. That era, we had those kind of things, and they're all classic shows. Every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of them holds up, I think.
Yeah. F Troop is one of those shows that ran for 2 seasons.
One of my favorites.
Yes.
Larry Thorch is still around. He's like 98 or 99 or something. But yeah, F Troop was one of my favorites when I was a kid. McHale's Navy was one of my favorites when I was a kid. I love that show. And then later I get to work with Tim Conway. I'm having a conniption. My God, Tim, and he couldn't have been nicer. He's a super nice guy.
I would always hope so. I saw him on Dorf, which I know you've been in, and the Married with Children episodes.
Yeah. You saw what? What was the other one?
Married with Children. He played Peg's father in several episodes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I never saw that. Married with Children I never super got into. I've seen a few episodes, but it's never been one of my favorites, even though I hear it's really a hilarious show.
It's very much a product of its era. So if you lived in that era, which I know you did, you get the humor. Now it's hard to get somebody into it if they haven't seen stuff like that before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I mean, it's like I just don't think it's going to age as well as, say, the F Troops and the I Dream of Genies and that sort of thing.
Gotcha. I totally know what you mean. They said that about Dallas. Dallas was like this big show in the 80s, and they just said it hasn't aged well. They put it in reruns, and it wasn't really a big hit. It didn't age well.
And I struggle to figure out what the difference is, because is it just that the audience now won't get into a fantastic comedy?
Aaron, you're asking a question that they've been asking for all that. Why did Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton last and other comedians are forgotten? Who knows? Why did the Three Stooges, why are they lasted through time and all? And others have been forgotten. The Ritz Brothers, nobody knows. But the Three Stooges, everybody knows, So it's just, the art. Why is, when Shakespeare was writing in his time, did he have any idea he would be this god, that he's Shakespeare, the most famous writer of all time. He's known all over the universe. Did he know? No, he had no idea. He was just another writer hacking out his work, But we pick art. Our art, the definition of art is it's something that communicates to us. It communicates to us. You see a great movie. You see Red River, or you see Rio Bravo, And this is something great. You see Martin and Lewis, this communicates people. Elvis Presley, this communicated to millions of people. Whereas, something communicates less. There was something about Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe came up in here. There were all these blondes. You look at the 50s, and every other actress is this blonde bimbo like Marilyn Monroe. But something about Marilyn Monroe appealed to people. We saw it in their eyes. We saw it in their presence. Something about this attracted us. And she's probably the most famous woman in the world. I always go, who's more famous than Marilyn Monroe? She's more famous than queens, first ladies. She's on every internet all over the planet. There's just something about her that communicated to us.
And she communicated to us in a very short period of time because she got famous somewhat young, but then died a little just shortly thereafter.
Well, how about James Dean?
Yes. How
about James Dean? 3 films, but he's more immortal than anybody. He's like the icon of icons.
And people have pitched the idea that that's part of it. That if they had long and successful careers, they would have faded away. And I'm sorry, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, who knows? Well, I say that in one of the essays. I don't know if you read. I wrote tons of articles on the internet, but I said, let's say James Dean had lived. Yeah, no. Here's the one. Let's say Marilyn Monroe had been a brunette. Let's say she never been a brunette. Would have been the same effect? Probably not. What if the Beatles had kept Pete Best? They never fired Pete Best, and Ringo never came in. It's stuff we'll always ask. Who knows? Gilligan's Island, you and me were talking about before, Aaron. Okay. But Jerry Van Dyke was off. He was the first choice. What if Jerry Van Dyke could play Gilligan and they never had Bob Denver? Would it have been the same? It's hypothetical things. Again, like sports. What if Babe Ruth played today? Babe Ruth goes out and gets drunk, and he has all these horrors, and then he comes the next day and hits 3 home runs. Could he do that nowadays? Would it be the same thing? Would Muhammad Ali be as great a boxer now? This is the question. They're just hypotheticals that we always ask.
Yeah.
Would have been obviously President Obama. He would never have been a president 50 years ago. There would have been no way. History would have been different. There's no way he could have been president. Trump or whatever. You do politics, any field, there's like that.
And I hate to, because just like I said, we can't know. It's interesting to play with the possibilities, but I think that's how we get to decide what's really important when we look at these things. Like I said, is the fact that she was blonde important? Is the fact that she was young important? Is the talent? Obviously, there's a combination, but what is more important than something else?
Mm-hmm. It's just, I don't know, to define talent, you're right. It's just something that communicates. As far as acting, as far as showbiz, it's just something that communicates. There were all these comedy teams, but first, what was it about Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis that communicated to us? What was it about the Marx Brothers communicated that the Ritz Brothers didn't? What was it about Marilyn Monroe that communicated more than Jane Mansfield? It's a different thing. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like this aesthetics. How do you write down what aesthetics is? You can't put it into words. You can't define. You see the most beautiful girl in the world. Let's say we see Sophia Loren. Mm-hmm. Sophia Loren. You just look at this goddess. How can you write what it is? This is a very beautiful woman. This is a pretty girl. Okay, that doesn't really explain it though. What is this magic aesthetic that Sophia Loren has?
And I can sit here and we could take out a picture of 10, 20 actresses, and we could disagree on which one is more beautiful than which one, and because we're each looking at something.
It's subjective. Steve Allen had the great quote. He was talking about comedy. We're talking about our favorite comedians. Some people love Jerry Lewis. Some people think he's the most unfunny guy in the world. Bob Hope, same thing. The Marx Brothers. It's like millions of people hate the Three Stooges. To me, there's nobody funnier. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Steve Allen's line, he goes, taste in comedy is like taste in colors or cars or women. He goes, it's all subjective. And that's what it comes down to. It's all subjective. It's just that the great stars like Elvis, you have these millions and millions, tens of millions of subjective people who think he's great. That's all it is.
But here's the thing about comedy, is that there's an honesty to that can't be faked. If you laugh, you're going to laugh. Even if you don't want to laugh. If it's funny, it's going to make you laugh.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons we put these comedians on something of a pedestal, is because once we're laughing, we can't deny it.
Right. True.
I have seen people, like, for example, people who put down lowbrow comedies, and I'll pull out Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey and put it on.
Right.
And they start laughing. And it's like, but you hate this. And they hate themselves for laughing, but it's like, yeah, but it hit that note. And
yeah, sometimes you laugh in spite of yourself.
Yeah. But you can't fake. You can get excited over an action movie and then say, well, yeah, it wasn't that great after all. Once I thought about it, and
Hmm.
a tragedy, you can say, well, it really was kind of hokey, but you can't fake the laughter.
Yeah, yeah, true.
So if you have to go beyond Gilligan's Island, what would be your next
Right.
go-to?
Well, my favorite probably of all time of any show was the Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone has so much truth. That Twilight, I consider Rod Serling the Shakespeare of the 20th century. I always go, I learned more truth from the Twilight Zone than I did in 12 years of public school. So the Twilight Zone would be the greatest show. Gilligan's Island is a more visceral thing, I like,
Hmm.
you get to see Ginger, blah, 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 boom. It's a funny show, it makes me laugh all the time. And there were some very witty lines in it, too. It's like the Three Stooges. Nobody talks about the wit of the Three Stooges. Everybody knows, they're this slapstick thing, and they poked in the eyes and they slapped. Everybody knows that. But if you watch a good Three Stooges short, they had said a lot of witty things. There was a lot of witty verbal humor in it. And same with Gilligan's Island. There were some funny lines in there.
This scene where Mo says, you got to take a bath, and Curly says, what is it, Monday already?
Oh, yes, I see. Okay, I didn't understand what you said. No, you're right, exactly, something like that. Or they'll go like, there's one they go, they're picking one at random. There's Mo goes, I am an artist. And Larry goes, I am an artist. And then Curly goes, oh, a pair of drawers. And that's a very clever line, a pair of drawers, like a pair of underwear, but they're drawers that drop. That's a funny, funny line. That's as funny as any line ever, It's funny.
Yeah, and like I said, I agree with on the Twilight Zone, because Twilight Zone,
Twilight Zone's awesome. Oh,
yes.
God. The episodes will make you weep. Rod Serling understood so much about truth, and he just learned so much truth. He understood what evil was. He understood what good was, and trust, all these themes he had, and he just nailed it.
I'm a big science fiction guy, and that was kind of the first point when adult science fiction became mainstream. It may not have been the first point, but it was a big one.
Right.
You weren't making just monster movies for the kiddies. This was like, we're going to tell an out-of-this-world story that's going to talk straight to the grown-ups.
Yeah, exactly. We're going off on all kinds of tangents, you and me. That's okay. When two friends talk, that's just how they talk, we're going to just talk about baseball now. You drift off into different things.
And that's
a good interviewer, which you are. You're a good interviewer, and they'll just go along with it. The guy will go off on this tangent, and you'll just go along with them.
Well, and
he'll follow the road,
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm trying to get into, what your motivation is, what you like, what you find interesting, and because, I go to a lot of conventions, and I don't want to ask you what your favorite episode of the show you were on was, or stuff like that, stuff that I know you've been asked a million times. I just want to get you to thinking about what you really enjoyed, and you've done great so far.
Okay.
One more thing.
I mean, there's so many different arts I enjoy, so many movies I enjoy. My favorite movie of all time is A Hard Day's Night, The Beatles. I love The Hustler. The Hustler's up there. Every year on my birthday, Aaron, I do the same thing. I always watch Tombstone. It's my one custom. Tombstone is my favorite Western. I always watch on my birthday. Why? It gives me faith for humanity. It gives me faith in humankind, that somehow we're going to get out of the mess we're in. And that's the message of Tombstone, I think, that you can always get out of it. There's a way out somehow. So that's one of my favorites. I love. Oh, one's coming on, Aaron. I don't know if you've seen it on Sunday. My Favorite Year. One of my favorite movies. I love that movie.
I have not seen that.
Yeah, please see it, Aaron. Treat yourself. It's one of the funniest comedies ever made. It's a beautiful story. It's on Sunday on TCM. I know. Check your local listings, but it's Sunday on TCM.
I don't get cable, but I can obtain that movie somehow or other without them.
Yeah. Oh, it'll be easy to order online. Yeah.
That's going to happen for sure. So, okay, I'm going to just pick one more of your works before I cut you loose here.
Sure.
Life with Louie was another show that
Life with Louie. I remember doing that. I remember meeting him. That was a cartoon show. I met me with the nicest guy. I don't remember that much about it, to be honest. I remember doing it. Nothing stands out. It's just when I recorded, I was never with Louie. It was one of those we didn't record as an ensemble. We did it separate. But then I did later meet Louie Anderson. I don't know what he's doing now, but he was a very nice guy.
He always struck me that way.
Yeah.
And again, it's just
he could have done the Fatty Arbuckle story. I always thought Hollywood's never done the Fatty Arbuckle story really, and I always thought Louis could have done that. He could have played Fatty Arbuckle.
I could see that. I could see that for sure. We always have those dream castings that let me run this by you here because I think you would. Are you familiar with the show Big Bang Theory?
Yes, I love it.
Okay. The actor who plays Sheldon, Jim Parsons.
Yes, he's wonderful.
I would love to cast him in a movie about the life of Mike Nesmith from the Monkees.
Okay, that's an interesting. That's a very creative and clever one. I could see that. I could kind of see it. Yeah.
I mean, they both.
He kind of looks like him. He kind of sounds like him. There's that drawl. Yeah.
I think
And Mike had a very fascinating. Mike's book is very fascinating. The only thing I didn't like about Mike's biography, I read it. He didn't talk about the monkeys that much. There was like one chapter devoted to the monkeys. Which, come on, I mean, whether he likes it or not, he's always going to be known for the monkeys.
Well, his video pioneering, he likes to think is
He's a video pioneer. You're right.
Right. And I get that, but yeah, come on. The 2 years that you were on the monkeys is what put you on the map. At least put a nod to that.
Exactly. Yeah, we were talking about Ginger. Tina Louise, the same thing. You know, no matter what she did, you're going to be Ginger. I'm sorry. You'll always be known as Ginger.
I mean, we talked about a lot of things. I told you when we first talked on the phone, I've only seen bits and pieces with Grease. I have a bit of a history that's kept me from watching the whole thing. But
oh, my God. Oh, you got to see that. I mean, speak of classics.
Yeah, but you don't mind
Not to brag. I don't want to toot my own horn. Do you know, Aaron, I'll meet to this day. I've met maybe like 20 through the years. Through all the 40 years, I've met 20 that like Grease 2 better than Grease. And I'm like, are you serious? You know, it's not the same universe. Grease is really a classic, beautiful musical. And Grease 2, I just think it's a throwaway B movie.
Fair enough. When I went to I didn't study theater in college, but I went to a school with a very strong theater program. And all the theater people were obsessed with Grease. So I feel like I absorbed a lot of it purely through osmosis. And I watched a bit of it here and there when it was on TV. So yeah, it's nothing against it. But my point is, do you object to being primarily known for Grease?
Yes, definitely the answer is yes, because I have so little. Most of my stuff was cut out of Grease. Grease was my very first movie, and I had a lot of shtick there. And when I went to the premiere, they cut most of it out. And I asked Randall Kleiser, our director, is the nicest guy you could imagine. He's super nice. And he just goes, look, this is John and Olivia's show. You know, you were Eddie. Nobody knew me at the time. I was my first film. So I ended up mostly on the cutting room floor. I get the pie in the face, you know, and I walk down the stairs, they mess my hair, and you see me jumping around in the dance scene. But most of my stuff was cut out. And I went to the premiere, and, you know, you do your first film, you're real excited. Then I didn't know what the cutting room floor was. So I went to the premiere, and I saw that, and, you know, my heart sank. I go, my God, I'm hardly in this movie. Now, I'm known for it because my own theory is because I look different. Everybody else is a cool greaser. They're all Fonzie, you know, these cool black, and I have my little ice cream suit. So I think I'm known for that. First of all, the scope of Grease, it's got to be, I would say it's one of the 5 most popular movies ever made. It's got to be, because you don't know how many people I've talked to over the years, especially with women. They go, it's my favorite movie. I've talked to 3 women who broke their tape, literally. I've watched Grease so many times I broke the tape, they say. And you talk to women, how many times have you seen it? Talk to an average woman about Grease. I've seen it a dozen times. I've seen it 100 times. It's kind of like the Star Wars for women, I think. But the most popular would have to be Wizard of Oz, you know. Then, I don't know, you go down the list. But Grease has got to be, I'll bet it's one of the 5 most popular movies ever made.
I would agree with that. I mean, it hits that for sure. Well, Eddie, I know it's getting late, and I don't want to keep you too long, but I really, really am enjoying this, and I appreciate everything we talked about here.
Well, listen, I totally enjoyed talking to you. You're an excellent interviewer. You ask very interesting questions. You're a wonderful interviewer, and I look forward to hearing it. I hope you can get it to me, Aaron, so I can put it on my Facebook page. I love the interview to be listened to by my fans, by my Facebook friends.
I will absolutely send you an email when this goes live, and you can share it anywhere you'd like. But I would like to point my fans toward your Facebook page and any other social media. So it's
my joy. It's my joy. You know, there's heroin addicts. People take acid or opium. You know, Facebook's my drug of choice. I love it, Aaron. I'm on it all the time. I love my friends. My only objection is you can only have 5,000 friends. There's so many wonderful people out there. I have on my waiting list. There's over 1,000 people. I just wish I could have more people, but I just love and treasure my Facebook friends. We're like a big family.
And is that where your primary draw is? You don't have a website, you don't do Twitter, you just do it Facebook?
Yeah, I do have a website. My Uncle Leo runs my website, but I don't have hardly anything to do with that. Okay. My heart is in my Facebook page.
Well, then I will strongly recommend people go there and check you out.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Aaron. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Aaron, and I wish you continued success with your show.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate that, and I would like to have you back on at some point soon.
It'll be my pleasure anytime. Okay, take care, Aaron. Have a great night.